The Lay Clerk's Handbook. Written and read by Robert Dufton. Introduction. Before you start immersing yourself in the subsequent recordings, there are a few points I should make clear. This book is not a thesis. I do not hope to impose any opinion about any religion or religious denomination. Those readers looking for an argument on the existence of a supreme being, or on the relevance, intention, or demeanour of religion with its controversy from a modern stance, will be sorely disappointed. This guide was not written in an attempt to defend, offend, or favour any belief. It will neither commend nor reprimand the denominations of the Church or their ideals. I also try not to state views about music or musicians, but occasionally there are a few which may warrant mentioning for constructive anecdotal reasons. This book is not a methodology on singing. Those looking to find guidance buried deep within these pages as to greatly develop one's singing technique will not find such guidance. I, having fewer hours of technical advice under my belt in my lifetime than many of my colleagues, am not prepared to advise others on how best to achieve a pleasing tone, although I can tell you when I hear a displeasing one. I have done my best to avoid such topics, and dedicate my writings to pointers on performance and professionalism within choirs, stationed within churches or elsewhere. All the techniques in these recordings are tried and tested approaches to choral music, some being much older than others. This is not a guide to what should be done when it comes to choral music. It is a guide to what is and what could be considered in the musical direction of professional choirs. I try attentively to include detail and explain as many aspects as are mentioned. Although each of these points seems small in individual effects and significance, on a larger scale, the piecing together of all these elements will transform a choir into a significant singing force. What one can expect to find here is a comprehensive guide including every possible detail that a lay clerk, songman, choral scholar, cantor, or vicar choral, prospective or current, could want to know about his or her profession. It also goes into quite some detail on various singing skills and approaches to choral method on both large and small scales, which will unify all singers' understanding of church musicianship and, as a result, reduce required rehearsal time. I should state that, although this handbook is written by and specifically for these professionals, I hope that it will be of immense value to amateur choir members, secular choir members, directors, accompanists, clergy, lay staff, and members of the congregation. I have heard it said that the magnificence of the Church of England is in its diverse and distinctive approaches towards its music and its implementation in services across the world. This book is a tool, then, to unify choirs, not in their methods, but in the quality and understanding of their musical endeavours. That is to say that by no means are the traditional and localised methods in church singing incorrect, rather that after hearing many of these methods, the ones detailed here are those which have proven most practical and effective to me, and therefore qualify for inclusion. This book is intended to appeal to anyone and everyone who is considering choral singing as a Wednesday night's pursuit in one of their local musical societies. Much of the information given applies to professional accompanists and instrumentalists, as well as orchestra conductors who are new to the choral scene, and even experienced choirmasters who have forgotten or never have experienced what it is like to be on the other end of the maestro's baton. The church musician. Here I shall condense the long history of the church musician into a short overview. I try to explain the language of music as it is introduced, so that the greenest of singers can pick up some technical language and use it on their own terms. Any musical terminology which I do not deviate to explain is findable in any thorough encyclopedia. Lay clerks have been employed to sing in cathedrals since the Middle Ages. We associate the Renaissance music period, Dunstable, to Bird, and onwards with professional composers, and the Baroque music period, Henry Purcell, to J.S. Bach, and onwards with the professional musician. But even before the times in English history with which we would associate the origin of the professional musician, services in abbeys would have included hymns and psalms sung by the resident cantor and choirs of monks who would regard church music as their livelihood. As long as there has been music, there has been singing. Christianity began as a small persecuted Jewish sect. Descriptions of the various early Christian martyrs are given in the chapter on the lay clerk in their workplace. At first, there was no break with the Jewish faith. Christians still attended synagogues and the temple in Jerusalem just as Christ had done, and presumably still carried on the same musical traditions in their separate Christian meetings. The first Christians worshipped in synagogues until the movement away from Semitic culture, aided by the power, diversity and size of the Holy Roman Empire. The effect was especially noticed in regions over which Rome had a great influence. The only record of communal song in the Gospels is the last meeting of the disciples before the crucifixion. In the epistles, there is a reference to St. Paul encouraging the Ephesians and Colossians to use psalms, hymns and spiritual songs. Later, there is historical evidence from Pliny the Younger, who wrote to Emperor Trajan about how to prosecute the Christians in Bithynia, modern Turkey. He described their practice of gathering before sunrise and repeating antiphonally a hymn to Christ as to God. Antiphonal psalmody is the singing or musical playing of psalms by alternating groups of performers. The peculiar mirror structure of the Hebrew Psalms makes it likely that the antiphonal method originated in the services of the ancient Israelites. According to the historian Socrates of Constantinople, its introduction into Christian worship was due to Ignatius of Antioch, who, in a vision, had seen the angels singing in alternating choirs. The use of instruments in early Christian music is mentioned in the Psalms, particularly Psalm 150.
Greatness. Praise him with the sound of the trumpet. Praise him with the psaltery and harp. Praise him with the timbrel and dance. Praise him with stringed instruments and organs. Praise him upon the
In the late 4th or early 5th century, St. Jerome wrote that a Christian maiden ought not even to know what a lyre or flute is like, or to what use it is put. The introduction of church organ music is believed to date from the time of the papacy of Pope Vitalian in the 7th century. So why did England develop such a strong tradition and love of choral services? With its geographical distance from the Eastern world, it is speculated that the singer's preference for the more numerically defined modes of Western music established by mathematical scholars was the main culprit for choral music being so popular in Europe. The freedom and variety that modes allowed composers spawned an endless canvas of possibilities, although some schools were suppressed by certain artistic constraints by way of rules. Seeking segregation from the then considered heathen secular tunes and temperaments of the Eastern world, it became necessary for a unique approach to music theory to be established. I talk later about the migration of Greek and Turkish musical influences on the medieval music system later in a chapter on the lay clerk and hymnody. Another theory is that the comparative abundance of literate scribes and writing materials enabled music theory to be solidified. Many of the scribes will have inhabited monasteries, schools and courts with chapels, which will have furthered the popularisation and interest in music. We can also deduce that because metals such as tin and copper were readily available, and with the developed art of blacksmithery and mathematics in the West, church instruments would be of a fine enough quality to be joined by singers and other instruments in worship. The invention of the printing press and its use in music publication played an important role in the success of English music. The press was sustained by the support of competitive choral societies, leading to an affluence in high art and madrigalic compositions. Britain was a source of great interest for composers across Europe. It was this interest that caused Sweelinck to arrange various pieces by English composers such as Dowland. It was also the source of many great early composers before the lull after Handel's death. Maybe this abundance of skilled composers ensured a healthy supply of new and innovative music for the choirs of chapels such as the ones in Oxford and Cambridge, which were the only English universities open in the 13th to 18th centuries. I like the image of professional maestros and notable organists being the pop stars of the day. Centuries before the Tudor dynasty stirred up the church, these early laymen would, of course, have been Catholic. I spent 5 years of my education at a Benedictine monastery, which provided me with a unique viewpoint when imagining what it would have been like to cant in the earliest of ages at the dawn of church music. And now here I am, at the other end of the scale. The present, the pinnacle of time, as we know it, is presenting us with alternative and more beautiful approaches to church music, much of this being due to the extraordinary enterprise which is the Anglican Church. Under the employment of the Church of England, or perhaps even of their own free will, the lay clerks, who may at one time have only been 2 or 3 men strong, were given the duties of hymnody in public services. This being the common practice after the shifts from Catholicism and Protestantism and back and forth. When stability within the English Church had been reached, the prospect of the paid songman was adopted across the country, as across continent, and soon after, the global community. This happened out of a necessity to find more singers, and more singers with the increasing amount of skill required to tackle a growing catalogue of new music. Imagine being installed at Leipzig at the time when Johann Sebastian Bach was writing a new cantata every week. Lay clerks have been present in English cathedrals ever since, contributing to a tradition which spans over 500 years. During this time, the art of church singing has developed and ripened into something which has never been as exciting. Now more than ever, the position of lay clerk is about the music. For me, at least, it is the music which fascinates, and this, among other things, is what will be discussed. The 21st century has seen a surge in the number of female lay clerks being employed. Fronted by churches such as Peterborough Cathedral and Croydon Minster, the movement in acceptance of song women is underway, and mezzo-sopranos are selected to fill alto vacancies. Modern social trends have led to the inclusion of women as scholars also, on the organ at Truro Cathedral and various Oxbridge colleges, and as singers at St Mary's, Edinburgh. In 2007, the first female directors of music were appointed at Guildford Cathedral and Chichester Cathedral. The position of a lay clerk is one of responsibility and reliability, as he or she is responsible for the music which he or she is expected to express effectively on a weekly basis and to be a face and figurehead for his or her church. Lay clerks are integral to the church community and are seen as both socially and religiously significant to clergy and congregation alike, as they are capable contributors to the liturgy and societal gatherings associated with the church. The chapters within this guide are a result of observations, research, experience and, more importantly, a passion for a higher standard of choral singing. Hopefully, upon delving into this short guide to custom and etiquette in a cathedral choir, the term lay should no longer apply to you. Although musicians have been known to be somewhat relaxed in their approach to their livelihood, many strive for the utmost professionalism in church music. Their loyalty to and fondness of sacred choral music is admirable. I have sometimes heard, over my relatively short tour of duty in the world of Anglican music, the most basic of music-related questions asked during rehearsals by lay vicars, who are, by definition, supposed to be the most experienced choir members. I feel compelled to reveal and instruct just how trouble-free preparing and delivering church performances can be. In just a few chapters, one will begin to see just how much there is to be considered when striving for supreme professionalism in this unusual occupation. I can wholeheartedly encourage singing as a hobby, if not as an occupation. Scientific studies suggest that singing can have positive effects on the singer's health. The Guardian's Alice Wignall wrote an article on the physical and psychological benefits of singing following the repopularisation of singing by televised talent competitions. The research available on singing identifies some key physical benefits. It exercises major muscle groups in the upper body. It is an aerobic activity that improves the efficiency of your cardiovascular system, leading to increased alertness. Aerobic activity is linked to stress reduction, longevity, and better overall health. Improved airflow in the upper respiratory tract is likely to lessen the opportunity for bacteria to flourish there. Singing also aids the development of motor control and coordination, and studies have shown that it improves neurological functioning. Research published in the Journal of Music Therapy in 2004 suggested that group singing helped people to cope better with chronic pain. Advocates of singing lament its diminishing role in our lives compared to the days when we sang to pass the hours round the pub piano, to soothe babies, and to mark moments of celebration and sorrow. Singing is sacred, everyday, ritualistic and spontaneous. It makes us better, and makes us feel better, and we should all be doing more of it. Reflecting on this, even if music relieves pain by acting as a distraction, that makes it a sensible recreation. This is the message that I believe H.D. Patch Adams tries to convey in another form of entertainment. His creed, and that of his project, the Gesundheit Institute, is that laughter is the best form of effective doctoral care, or something along those lines. I have had the pleasure of meeting members of Lost Chord, a group dedicated to healing through music therapy. One study found that both singing and listening to choral music increases the levels of dopamine in the body. This is the neurotransmitter responsible for reducing stress levels. Reduced anxiety is known to have positive effects on the immune system. According to various health organisations, singing is thought to burn around an extra 30 calories per hour compared to just standing. I have seen for myself the enjoyment which singing can give to people. The confines of modern society inhibit people's desire to be free and expressive. Singing with friends is a form of escape and presents a time to be artistic, creative, and part of a team. St. Augustine said, "To sing is to pray twice." When musicians come together to praise, give thanks to, and ask of God in a musical way, they seem to enjoy it twice as much. Using this book. The book is structured to represent the chronological order concerned with a typical choir's lifetime. I start by introducing a setting in which a modern lay clerk might be asked to work daily. The chapters are designed to be relevant to the progressive parts of a typical service: robing, rehearsing, hymn singing, psalm singing, performing, and processing. These are preceded and interspersed with helpful background notes about the church, the music, and the liturgy. The first chapter, covering the lay clerk and their choir, introduces the team and its constituents, namely the director, organist, and voice parts, with their unique musical characteristics. Here might one come to understand one's role in a choir, as well as the role's history, both musically and hierarchically. Those in a position of building a choir should look here for help with decisions which must be made when adopting a group of singers or simply modifying it. Here one will find information on the stereotypical director and organist, with whom the lay clerk works, so that you, as a contextual Christian, may further come to embrace and excel in your profession and position in one of the most remarkable institutions in history, the Church of England. I include a chapter concerning the lay clerk in their workplace. Born out of infamy and subject to consecutive scandal and success, the C of E is mother of most things great in Western music, and we are ultimately so proud of it being all things English. An institution so integral to the development of organ music, as well as organ technology, and also, from a lay clerk's point of view, the employer, I felt that it should not go overlooked in this guide. This chapter, as a general guide to the workplace of the lay clerk, contains all the terminology used and daily goings-on in a typical church, old and modern. I then arrive at the nitty-gritty in the chapter relating to the music and clothing of the lay clerk, discussing what a lay clerk is expected to deal with note-wise and robe-wise. This section is to be used to familiarise oneself with the various types of music one may be required to perform during the year, ranging from verse anthems to double choir chorale choruses. It helps with choosing music which will suit the choir, organ, and building so that it may be exhibited effectively. It discusses how music is chosen to suit the church season, its feast days, and the choir. The chapter on the lay clerk and rehearsal confronts the obstacle of learning music. Learning is vital for delivering convincing performances of music. Luckily, this guide can show you just how the primary doubt felt when encountering a new piece can be lessened within a few well-coordinated minutes of musical study. It shows how to rehearse pieces alone or with the group in very short spaces of time, covering everything from initial introduction to the final polishing. I have included a few paragraphs useful to both directors and singers alike, explaining the most efficient way of managing one's time during a rehearsal. In the light that many choirs are required to work against the clock in preparing their evensong, here one can find the answers to the questions which responses to run through and how can we improve on an already perfectly acceptable psalm chant. 3 chapters follow after on the subject of worship music, explicitly hymn singing, psalm singing, and music in a more general sense. These are for those who would like to make a lacklustre anthem a powerful performance or transform a dreary evensong into a psalm-enchanted evening. High in density, these sections contain background, how-tos, terminology, tips, and practices. I hope that the reading of them will be of great help to many. A chapter directed towards choirmasters as much as it is lay clerks, Conducting the Lay Clerk depicts a number of different ways of expressing a score in physical movements. It can be used by singers and instrumentalists to learn how to interpret a conductor's actions. I have also witnessed many occasions when a lay clerk has been asked to step in for the maestro. When required to intercede as director, this is the chapter to consult. The next chapter, on the lay clerk and presentation, details a few areas of concern for directors and senior lay staff. Their alarm is understandable, as the way a choir looks on stage or in the stalls is as much a part of the charm that they radiate whilst making a brilliant sound. A choir's public image is what keeps music-loving members of the congregation coming back, and churches thrive on attendance. The final chapter covers the topics of touring, concerts, deputizing, recording, joint services, and other occurrences which will spring up for the cathedral choir during the church year. Many of the rules detailed up to this point in the book apply to these additional choir duties. I am guilty of enjoying these experiences and fees too much to concentrate on being an exemplary lay clerk, but this chapter should help you and your choral technique to benefit from these involved